Good evening. I want to say thank you on behalf of Forward Devils Lake and the City of Devils Lake for attending our town hall meeting regarding the Eagles Ledge Oil Refinery that is proposed for our industrial park. It's great to see all of you here, and showing as much interest as there is in the community is great. We are here to educate you about the proposed refinery and what that means for Devils Lake as a whole. Just to give you a background as where we started, September 5th, about 90 days ago, we met with Eagles Ledge and discussed what it is they see as a vision for Devils Lake and what it is that they need from us. With that, we learned of their land needs, in which we were able to go back, do some vetting, and discussing and investigating as to where is the best proposed area for this location. With that, we had to analyze MDU pipeline access and capacity, which does not have the capacity on the east side of Devils Lake that it does on the west. The Enbridge pipeline also has access on the west side of Devils Lake. The rail access is easier to attain on the west side next to our current industrial park, along with Highway 2 access. And currently, Devils Lake is laid out so the west side is veered towards industrial park. We want to continue that location moving west, and our residential and retail business sectors moving to the east. I don't know if many of you have noticed or read the article in the Grand Forks Herald that was in there on Sunday, but it says there's a proposed 7 refineries in the works right now in North Dakota. We want to thank Eagles Ledge for giving Devils Lake the opportunity to discuss one of them. At this time, that we know we're going to entertain a number of questions and comments, and we are looking forward to hearing what the public has to say. At that time, we ask that everybody is respectful and speaks loudly, and before addressing the panel, they say their name and where they're from. If there are questions that are unanswered, we will then take them back, do our due diligence in vetting the process and understanding what it is that the answers are. With that, a report will be filed. It will be found at Forward Devils Lake, where I will then do a press release that everybody can come and pick it up if they wish. As for today, the city representatives that are on our panel are Terry Johnson, City Administrator, Dick Johnson, our Mayor, and Guy Desatel, my Board President. As myself, Rachel Lindstrom, Executive Director for Forward Devils Lake. As far as the program layout, we're going to go into presentations, which we have 6 people that are going to be introducing themselves, along with what it is their role is in this project. Starting out with the Department of Commerce, Mike Fladlin will be speaking on that behalf. Then we'll move in with Boris Weiss, the CEO of Eagles Ledge, Bob Woolley with Triad Engineering, and Terry O'Clair and Craig Thornton from the Department of Health will be splitting both water and air needs. And then we'll finish up with Earl Pomeroy with the due diligence process from Alston & Bird legal team. After that, we will then entertain a presentation from Guy Desatel as Forward Devils Lake's position in this venture. And then we'll open up into the questions and answers, which will be approximately 1 hour long. The moderators will go into what the rules are exactly for this the questions and answers section, and then we'll finalize with some words from our mayor and myself. With that, I'll introduce Galen and Dennis. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. I think she did a terrific job and a great overview of the evening. We think it's going to be a very informational evening for you, and the idea is to be open and really answer the questions that you have either already posed or would like to pose later on in the evening. Galen Caribou and I'm Denny Albert. We're going to be the moderators, particularly for the Q&A session. The presenters, as Rachel already indicated, will be coming up one at a time. They'll do a short presentation where we've allocated about 10 minutes for each of the presenters, so we'll keep on a very tight timeline tonight. If we don't do that, we've worked with a number of town hall sessions, and we thought it would be good if we were done before next Tuesday. So if we're going to keep it really, really tight in terms of the schedule, because we do want to allow that hour for question and answers. As you came in tonight, hopefully you received a little 5x7 card that has the ground rules for the evening. I'll go back to those before we get into the Q&A session. But as was already indicated, the idea is to be open to share, ask questions, share ideas. Certainly, we're all here to learn and to listen. When we get into the Q&A session, we will entertain one speaker at a time. And we're going to look at, it says on the little card 2 minutes, but we're going to go to a 3-minute time period. We'll probably orchestrate it so we move from the front of the room to the back and then into the balcony to make sure that everybody who's here who wants to ask a question gets a chance to ask that question. If there is something of a personal level that you prefer not to ask in this kind of a session, what we would encourage you to do is to just write that question on the back of the little card, turn those in to us at the end of the evening, and we'll make sure we'll get a personal response for you. With that, that's a quick overview of the ground rules, and I'm going to ask our first presenter from the North Dakota Department of Commerce, Mike Fladelin, to please come forward.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here tonight and see so many of you out there. There's obviously a lot of interest in a project that could be very beneficial to the city of Devil's Lake as well as the state of North Dakota. So I appreciate the invitation from the Economic Development Group and Mayor Johnson and just the opportunity of being able to be here to talk to you folks. But I work with the Department of Commerce, and my job is manager of energy business development. And basically what that is that I'm interested in projects like these because we want to promote primary sector projects. What does that mean? Well, primary sector are basically economic development projects that attract new wealth, create jobs, and then also broaden the tax base. So keep that in mind when you're looking at a project like this, because that is important, not only to Devil's Lake, but the state of North Dakota. And over the years, I've been in economic development for about 25 or 30 years. When I worked with MDU in economic and community development, we'd help communities with strategic planning and then also putting projects like this together. The difference between what it was like 25, 30 years ago when I started out in economic development and now is that people know about North Dakota. It used to be when we'd go out and promote the state as a place to do business, we'd talk to people and they'd say, well, isn't it kind of cold up there, and why do people want to live in North Dakota? And we'd actually get comments like that. Because weather, whatever it might be, declining population, not that much to do as far as they were concerned. Well, believe me, it's changed. People know where North Dakota is these days. And between North Dakota and Texas and some of the other parts of the country, we are going to surpass Saudi Arabia as oil producers. Now, it may be a ways off, but that's kind of where we're going. For so many years, we exported commodities, whether it was wheat, barley, sunflowers. We exported some power. We did add value to the coal and then exported it as power. At one point, more than 60% of our power that was produced in the state went out of state. It was an export. But there was another export that people talked about from time to time and were very concerned about. It was exporting our children. Nowadays, it's different because the people that are graduating from our schools, high schools, colleges, trade schools, and so on, they're staying here. And the people that have moved out of state are coming back. And do you know why that is? It's because of jobs. It's because of opportunity. Now, obviously, along with opportunity, sometimes comes issues. We've got a lot of oil and gas that's being produced in North Dakota, but we've also got the issue of gas flaring, which we're working on. We've also got the issue of transportation, highways, rail, pipelines, and so on. It's all being worked on. And partly we're a little bit behind because the oil business has moved so quickly. But this is an example, just like with Dakota Prairie Refinery out by Dickinson, and believe me, there are other companies that are looking at refineries as well. So this is not the only project that's being considered. You may have heard that even MDU and WBI, who have the refinery out by Dickinson, along with Calumet Specialty Products, which is an out-of-state company, they're looking at another refinery in Minot. And there are communities that would be more than happy to be considered for this refinery. Hopefully that doesn't happen, because this refinery can be a good community citizen, just like Tesoro Refinery in Mandan. Bismarck and Mandan has benefited greatly from having that 68,000 barrel a day refinery in Mandan. They're a good corporate citizen, they contribute to the community, and there's a lot of employees that are good citizens in the community. So we hope that you consider this very carefully and look at it positively, consider the facts, and then make a decision based upon that. But thanks again, and good luck.
Being a true good North Dakotan, they only took 5 minutes and 2 seconds out of his allotted 10 minutes. So, so Boris will welcome you to the podium.
Good evening, everybody. First of all, I want to thank you on behalf of Eagles Ledge in welcoming us to the community and giving us the opportunity to show you what we have in mind. I've got a presentation here. So who's Eagles Ledge Energy? Eagles Ledge Energy is a privately diversified energy company. Our key to success is in the management, it's in long-term relationships, and it's in the development of long-term projects. Our key focus on any project that we do is partnership with the community, long-term success, long-term economic benefits both ways. And this project in particular, is like all the rest. What we're looking to do is create a private-public partnership where the community, the city, and obviously Eagles Ledge and our spin-out. And our spin-out that will be operating here has a long-term, economic benefit to the community, not only in job creation but in equity partnership. So, specifically to Eagles Ledge Petroleum, we've got, developed a number of fossil fuel projects. We've been involved in infrastructure development. We've been involved in wind energy and other sustainable energy projects as well. Why North Dakota? As you're aware, North Dakota is now the second highest volume producing state in the country, producing topping 1 million barrels per day in production. The opportunity exists strictly because of infrastructure. Today the pipeline capabilities are approximately 300,000 barrels per day. You've got one producing refinery at 71,000 barrels per day. You've got a second refinery online. But between the two, as your community can see, and over the past visits that we've seen here, it's rail car after rail car of oil being transported, because that's your only option of getting that oil out. The producers are having to discount their product because they're actually having to export, and the cost of export going into refineries down into Louisiana, Texas, etc. And then in turn, the state has presently it's topping 53,000 barrels per day in diesel requirements. Even with the second refinery coming on board, you're still looking at approximately 30,000 barrels per day of a shortfall. So as everybody may be aware, is likely aware, you've got, the price of crude is dropping, but diesel is not. And the reason being is there's no secondary manufacturer. this is what, this is our primary product coming out of this proposed refinery, and will be able to be directed right back into the community. So it's going to save transportation. It's going to ideally save in costs, making a win-win situation for not only the Devil's Lake community, but also for the producers in the Bakken crude fields. We specifically for this project, we have established a company called American Dakota Refinery LLC, which is a Delaware corporation which will be headquartered in North Dakota. All operations and all business conducted will be done through North Dakota, which will offer taxation benefits in the community and in the state. Our operational lead for this project is, unfortunately, Jerry couldn't be here, but Dr. Jerry Bailey is our Chief Executive Officer for American Dakota Refinery. We'll call it ADR. Jerry comes to us from, he's past president of Exxon Arabian Gulf. Jerry has over 3 decades of operational experience, everywhere from exploration to refinery management. Jerry actually managed his last big refinery that he managed was in Aruba, a refinery that was processing just over 400,000 barrels per day. So he has all the experience, knowledge, and successful track record to be able to run this properly, efficiently, and environmentally focused on environmental impact. On our engineering construction of the refinery, Robert Woolley is taking on the role of Vice President of Engineering. Robert has over 30 years experience in the design, construction, and management of refinery plants. Robert was actually was the engineer on the last large grassroots refinery that was done 30 plus years ago, and has done, he and his team have done enormous amounts of work between then and now regarding upgrading refineries for all of the majors locally and abroad. And again, Bob will get into more detail, but Bob is presently also CEO of Triad Engineers. Triad will be providing the engineering, procurement, construction, and bring extensive experience in design and construction to the project. We also have members that aren't on the panel up here. I'd like to introduce Mark Donahue. Mark is on our Eagles Ledge, and Mark, if you'd stand up. Mark is on our Eagles Ledge and our ADR board. Mark will actually take on the role as Director of Construction and Development. Mark has many, many years of successful construction and development experience, and will work with Bob to oversee that the project comes in on time and is done successfully for both ADR and the community. And the other individual I'd like to introduce is Lauren Nystrom. Lauren is on our ADR board as well as the Eagles Ledge board. Lauren brings a wealth of governmental experience, both Canadian and international trade, will be instrumental in the long-term success of the project. And with that, I'd like to introduce Robert Woolley. Bob, can you come up, and Bob can take you through the development of the refinery and what we have proposed for you.
Did everybody hear that oops? Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure for me to be here with you this evening, and it's my job to provide you with some information about the refinery. And to that end, I've prepared a PowerPoint presentation which I will present on the screen and go through it a slide at a time and try to convey to you an understanding of what we're trying to accomplish with the refinery. It has been done before. It's not an experiment. And one thought that I would like you to retain in your minds as we go through the slides is that you've got an investor who's willing to put up several $100 million to become a member of your community and put a clean fuels refinery here, and no one in your community will have a greater incentive for it to succeed than the investor. So everything that you're worried about or hope for, so will he be. And that is to make a refinery that converts Bakken crude oil into ultra-low sulfur diesel fuel, and that does it in a clean manner. So the first slide will be there. To look at a refinery, this is a 30,000 barrel a day refinery. It was built near the community of Balzac, Alberta. That's a smaller community by far than Devil's Lake. And can you see the pointer? So I'll just mention a few features while it's up here. This is located on 240 acres. The 240 acres goes from down here up to here. And there's another 80 acres left over. And on that 80 acres, crops were sown and harvested there by the farmer who originally owned the land. So the agriculture and the oil refinery were existing side by side. There is the firewater pond for this refinery, and right beside it is the holding pond for the wastewater, and you'll have a similar setup. And in here you can see all of the process units, the office building, the control room, where every control valve in the refinery is controlled from. And there's a flare stack out here on the end. You can't quite see, it's out of the picture. And then in the background here, all this storage, which wraps around the refinery with rail loading and truck loading out here in the corner. So in your mind's eye, perhaps you can see what the setup will look like. This is a 30,000 barrel a day refinery, a little bigger than the one you're contemplating, but similar in appearance. Here is a block flow diagram. Engineers use this to define what units will be involved in the process, and I'll go through them just for your benefit. First of all, crude oil storage. You have to store the crude, and we're planning on 100,000 barrels of it for a 20,000 barrel a day refinery. And this crude oil storage will be in atmospheric tanks with a floating roof. And the floating roof goes up and down on top of the surface of the fluid to retain anything that wants to evaporate. And next, here's a steam methane reformer. That's a unit that takes natural gas and converts it into pure hydrogen. And pure hydrogen is an absolute requirement for clean fuels refinery, and you'll have plenty of it. At the bottom we have a power supply which will be supplied by the local utility company. You can see it's about 7.5 megawatts. And then we have an emergency generator in case of a power failure or similar occurrence where emergency power is required. Then the crude, at the rate of 20,000 barrels a day, is delivered into an atmospheric crude unit. You have a fired heater there because you got to heat it up. And then you put it into a distillation tower and separate it into its various components. And the manner in which you do that can be environmentally unfriendly or environmentally friendly. And I'll point out to you in subsequent slides that we intend for it to be very friendly. Then all the light ends from the atmospheric unit go up to the saturate gas or light ends unit, where the lighter streams at the very top, you can see the refinery fuel gas, is treated with an amine treater. That removes all the acid gas. That is to say CO2 and SO2, and retains it for its ultimate recovery rather than expulsion to the atmosphere. Below that is amine, C3, C4 treater. That's for the LPG, propane and butane. Does the same thing there, only in a liquid phase. And then off the stabilizer, which is a fractionating column in the light ends unit, all of the naphtha is stabilized. That means it's debutanized. And so all the really light material, C4 and lighter, goes overhead for treatment as I previously described. Then the naphtha is made available for sale. And that naphtha is a very low sulfur, although it's untreated. It's 2 ppm by weight of sulfur, you can see. And ultra low sulfur is about 10 ppm. So this is very good naphtha, and it's not going to be made into gasoline at this point. These orange units over here are all gasoline units, and they are not included in this initial design. The naphtha hydrotreater won't be installed yet, so the naphtha that comes off the light ends unit will be sold as heavy oil diluent or chemical naphtha. There are markets for it, and it'll be sold by truck or by rail. Then off the bottom of the crude unit comes the vacuum unit, where the crude is further distilled under a vacuum, so at a lower temperature, so it doesn't crack. Instead, you lift the gas oil, and gas oil is a naturally occurring component of crude oil, and it looks like lube oil that you buy in a can. And that's just exactly what it is. And that material will be sold as gas oil in this stream right here, and there are its properties. Boils between 650 and 1050 degrees Fahrenheit, and has a MCR weight percentage of 0.23. That's a measure of the carbon content that's in the gas oil, suggesting that it's very high quality gas oil, and ultimately can be hydrocracked into more ultra low sulfur diesel at some future time. And then you have the storage over here, another 300,000 barrels of product storage. So you'll have a tank farm of about 400,000 barrels. Here's the site, if you can see it on the map there. It's out by the grain elevator there. You can see the red line is the Enbridge pipeline bringing crude in. And the blue line is the natural gas pipeline, which we need. Those are the two feedstocks that the refinery needs. There's a close-up of the site, 360 acres approximately, and just north of the highway and west of town. Now, briefly, a grassroots modular refinery is an important concept to us because it has a dramatic effect on the schedule, cost, and quality of the refining components as they're built. They're built off-site in modular fabrication shops, and you can do much better work in a shop than you can in the field where the wind is blowing and so forth. So it's an important concept, and there's an example of a pipe rack module. You see it sitting up there. I don't have a really good pointer, but it's right up here. It sits on those piers, and while this is being built in a shop, all of this concrete is poured in the field at the same time, so the activities overlap. You shorten the schedule, reduce the cost, and improve the quality of the workmanship. There's a process module. This is a small process module which has heat exchangers, control valves, and all the other equipment that's needed as the finished part of the refinery, and you can see it sitting on a truck. So you haul that in, take it off, set it on its foundations, set other modules beside it, connect them all, and before you know it, you've got a refinery. And there is a completed modular refinery. It's this part down here. In the background is the mother refinery, which was the El Segundo refinery owned by Chevron. It's a 350,000 barrel a day refinery. And this little unit in here was built in a modular fashion and installed in the refinery. No lost time accidents, high quality, very efficient unit, and absolutely environmentally clean. A few of the plant design features for your information. The first idea is to try and prevent the occurrence of pollutants. And the first thing is the use of clean Bakken crude oil. You're blessed with that in North Dakota in abundance. There's 700,000 barrels a day of it, more in fact, that's being shipped by rail out of your province, state, for somebody else to refine it and sell it back to you for a profit. And we're proposing to modify that, bring some of those jobs into North Dakota. And then also the use of ultra-low NOx burners. These are just what they say they are. They produce NOx in concentrations less than 20 ppm. So it's as clean as it gets, and the technology is available, and we will apply it in every burner in the refinery. The use of low-carbon fuel, that means the use of natural gas. It's treated natural gas from the refinery that came from the crude oil, plus purchase of natural gas to provide all of the fuel and feed that's needed for the refinery. Next is we're going to minimize the use of live stripping steam in the process. One way to get crude to separate is to fire steam into the fractionator. That reduces the partial pressure of the hydrocarbon, and therefore it'll boil up at a lower temperature. Well, we're going to minimize the use of stripping steam simply because once you put it in the crude tower, you've contaminated it with oil, and it comes back to you as contaminated water. So we're going to minimize that and accomplish our heat generation by different means. A dry vacuum producer. We have a vacuum unit, so we'll have a dry vacuum producer which accomplishes the same purpose. Magnetic drive sealless pumps. There's an API specification 685 for these pumps. They're well proven, and their advantage is they don't have any seals. Now, anything of you here, and there's a lot of farmers here, so you probably know, pumps have seals. Seals are a source of leakage. A magnetic-driven pump has a motor with a rotating field and an impeller inside the pump, and it drags it around. But there's no shaft that goes through the casing of the pump into the pump, therefore no seal, therefore zero leakage. And then the refinery, of course, will be asbestos-free. No desalter. Desalter, there's about 4 pounds per 1,000 barrels of salt in Bakken crude. That's almost good enough to drink, but not quite. When we're finished with it, you can drink it. The trouble with a desalter is it takes 5% of the crude's 20,000 barrels a day, which would be 1,000 barrels a day of water, commingling it with oil, and therefore rendering it as a pollutant. Well, we're not going to use a desalter. So at the bottom line, we're going to get a minor source permit, which is a permit granted under the New Source Review permitting program, and is a pre-construction permitting program as part of the Clean Air Act. And that permit will specify every limit of every pollutant that the refinery is allowed to emit, and the best technology that is available to prevent that from happening will be applied. And so you're protected as an owner, and each of you as a member of the community, from pollution in the air by strict adherence to the minor source permit, which is what we'll get. The next permit that I've mentioned is the NPDES, which is the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System. Whoever thought of that one? But it's effective because it limits all the pollutants that you can put in the water that can ultimately perhaps find its way back to your lake. So the operation of the refinery will be governed by these, and the technology that's available to control them will be applied. It's available and it will be applied. The tanks will be built according to API 650 for the construction of new tanks. That's so over-designed I can hardly believe it, but it gives you comfort at night knowing that one of them won't split apart. The inspection of the tanks will be governed by API 653. These are all national refinery design standards. The tanks will be surrounded by tank dikes, and under the ground there will be plastic liners. So you've got a dike, a tank, and a plastic liner that goes between it. If anything leaks from the tank, it'll be retained by the dike, and it can't go underground because the plastic liner won't allow it. Under the tank itself, there'll be another plastic liner segregated, and anything that leaks from the tank will be stopped from spreading by this plastic liner. And between the tank and the liner, there is a leak detection system which, if there's a leak, it'll be identified immediately. And I don't think it'll ever get to that stage because these tanks are taken out of service on a regular basis and the bottoms are checked for leaks and repaired. And then there's a foam protection system and a vapor recovery system, because products and crude tend to make vapors, and with a vapor recovery system you compress them, cool them, and recover them. You put the gas into the fuel gas system, you put the liquids back into the refinery, and the water from the bottom goes to the wastewater treating unit. Pipe design is governed by ASME B31.1 and B31.3. Those of you familiar with pipe will know that those codes are very comprehensive and very demanding, and compliance with them is mandatory. Besides that, anything that's underground pipe in steel will be cathodically protected, where you have a zinc sacrificial anode protecting the pipe. And so it's the anode that corrodes instead of the pipe. Whoops. Double wall steel with leak detection for very corrosive service. If we require it underground, that's what we'll use. But a preferable solution, if there's not too much pressure, is to use plastic pipe, because it's continuous, it has a minimum number of connections, tends not to leak, and is inert chemically. Spill and odor containment. We require a spill prevention control and countermeasures plan called SPCC by EPA. It's implemented by EPA and managed by the State Department of Health, who are here this evening. We will have a facility response plan. There's an acronym for that too, FRP, not surprisingly. And within that plan, how you're going to handle any kind of a spill is previously determined so people can spring right into action. So I hope what you're seeing here is layers of redundancy in the design to protect you from any damage to the environment. We have segregated drain systems. Process areas are curbed and paved, and so anything that rains on a process area will be collected in a drain system and sent to the wastewater treatment unit to remove the oil from it. And anything that rains outside of the process area and outside of those curbs will be collected into a surface retention pond that I described to you in the beginning. It'll be about 200 feet by 200 feet by 7 feet deep, just for your interest. But its purpose is to retain this runoff to make sure there's no pollution, and then releasing it to the Devil's Lake City Municipal Water Treatment Facility, where it will be discharged in the same manner as is currently used. Now, the refinery has to deliver only water to the municipal system that is of sufficient quality that it won't worsen the quality of your municipal treatment. And that's governed by the NPDES permit I mentioned a while ago, and your assurance of that happening is that the refinery must comply with the Clean Water Act. And the technology is there, and it will. We have a process sour water closed drain to the wastewater treatment unit. Some water must be used in the process, not much, about 20 gallons a minute. And only a fraction of that will go to the process, whereupon it gets contaminated with oil. So it goes to the wastewater treatment unit. It's an API separator, if anybody knows what that is. It separates the oil and the water and releases only the water to the municipal treating system. And there are a few other features. The maintenance drain out, that means people are always taking samples and draining instruments. Well, with an MDO, they are collected in a closed piping system, recovered and restored to the refinery process. Once again, thoughtful protection of the environment. The tankage dikes, liners, and leak protection I previously described. The wastewater treatment unit will have an API-O water separator and vapor recovery unit as well. Then I've mentioned vapor recovery units before, which will be used in the loading areas and in the tank farms to recover any vapor or liquid that leaks or gets separated from the process, cool it, compress it, and return it back to the process. Then there's a flare safety device. Everybody knows about that, and the refinery, it's incumbent upon them for reasons of economic survival and for reasons of environmental protection to keep that flare at an absolute minimum. And we have floating roof tanks, which I described previously, for volatile products. Now there are some socioeconomic developments associated, and they mean permanent skilled jobs. In the refinery, modern technology will be employed to ensure full regulatory compliance. That means a clean operation producing clean fuels. And you'll have one of the most modern refineries on earth, and it'll be one of the cleanest and most efficient. There are temporary construction jobs required for skilled tradesmen over a 2-year period to build the refinery. We're going to do a lot of work in module shops and minimize the field work for the sake of cost, schedule, and quality. But a lot of work does have to be done in the field. Local contractors will be preferentially selected, and they'll be here for a couple of years to put the field components together. And of more interest is the 100 full-time operations and maintenance jobs that will result from the refinery's operation. Clerical, secretarial, electricians, engineers, etc., insulators, information technology specialists, janitorial services, laborers, pipe fitters, security and safety, etc. You can read them. A lot of jobs, and a lot of people will have the skills to go get them. The refinery will pay for everything that it uses and will make a significant contribution to the tax base. And for every job in the plant, there'll be 4 jobs in the community to support the plant operation. That's the way it works out, 4 to 6 jobs. So that's a substantial amount of employment, and it's interesting work, and it's portable. If you ever, and I can't imagine this, want to move away from Devil's Lake, you could go to Minneapolis or Calgary or Singapore and get a job as a refinery operator. Then I have to make note of the Bismarck State College National Energy Center of Excellence. They have training there, and I have a copy of their courses that they offer, and they offer courses that are exactly what you need to work here. So my kudos to the Bismarck State College. And so there, ladies and gentlemen, you see what is going to be done to protect your best interests environmentally and to provide you with jobs in a city which people will want to come to because there's work here to be done. And if people are here, that's good. If people leave, by the process of their exodus, they drag down property values and generally are not the sort of things that towns want to see. So that's it, ladies and gentlemen. I understand questions and answers will come later. Thank you for your attention. I appreciate it.
I think a very informative overview from Bob, and I'll call Terry O'Clair to the podium. And you can probably tell we gave Bob a few more minutes than 10, but it was we felt that it was very important for you to have that overview. Terry O'Clair is the director of the Division of Air Quality for the North Dakota Department of Health.
Because of my height, I'm going to put this down so everybody can see my face as I talk here. So, first of all, once again, my name is Terry O'Clair. I'm the air director for the State Health Department, and I'm actually pinch hitting for Dave Glott tonight. He's the chief of the Environmental Control Program for the state of North Dakota. Dave wasn't able to make it tonight. His furnace went out today. And in 10-degree weather in North Dakota, he was busily trying to find a heating and air conditioning contractor to come in and put in a new furnace. So I can truly say that Dave is home minding the home fires tonight. First of all, I want to thank the community of Devil's Lake for inviting us to be here tonight. Typically it's the health department that's putting on these public information events. So once again, thank you for Devil's Lake for inviting us. First of all, I want to be very clear. The health department is neither for nor against this project. We are simply here to do an environmental rule or environmental look at the application once we receive that. At this point in time, we have not received that, and I guess my role here tonight is to hopefully explain what we do and to assure you that we'll do a very thorough job, and at the end of that process, we'll make a determination on whether the facility will comply with the environmental regulations. It all starts with an application to the department, and you've heard earlier that there's 3 permits that the facility must obtain from us: the air quality permit, the water discharge permit, and they also need a stormwater runoff permit. If Dave were here tonight, he would say all those permits are equally important, but because I'm the air director, I'm going to say the air quality permit is the most important. How does that begin? Once again, it starts with an application, and I should mention a complete application. A number of applications that we receive on various facilities we have to turn back because we don't feel they're complete enough for us to do our review. So once that complete application is provided to us, we do a thorough examination of the air emissions from that facility to ensure it will meet standards that are specifically set for refineries, but also to meet what is called National Ambient Air Quality Standards. The National Ambient Air Quality Standards are set by EPA, and they're set to protect the health and welfare of everyone in the community and people throughout the nation. And we take this very seriously within my division. In fact, North Dakota is one of only a handful of states that meets all federal National Ambient Air Quality Standards. We're very proud of that fact. Once again, once we get that application and begin our review, we do a very thorough review. It typically takes us 3 to 9 months to go through that review, and at the end of that process, we typically prepare a draft permit. And at that time, we then go out for public comment to all the people of the community. It's typically a 30 to 60-day public comment period. And if there's enough interest, we also have a public hearing. And given the turnout that we've had here tonight, I would fully expect that we would have a public hearing up here in Devil's Lake for that. After reviewing all the comments that we get and responding to those comments, a decision is made whether to issue or deny the permit. And assuming the permit would be issued, we would then write a permit to construct and provide that to the company as a permit that they would have to follow in constructing that facility. We would expect the facility to take about 18 months to be built, 18 months to 2 years, what I heard earlier. And then at the end of that, once it's constructed, we go in and we do not only an inspection, but many times we'll require the company to do emissions testing with our people on site to ensure that the testing is done properly. And once again, so the facility can show that they're meeting what was contained in their permit to construct. Assuming all goes well, at that point, we would issue a permit to operate. And it doesn't end there. We would continue throughout the entire period that facility is operating to schedule inspections and perhaps require further testing as time goes on. So in a nutshell, once again, that was our purpose here tonight, to explain how the health department's involved in the process. And once again, we'd be happy to answer any questions when we get to that point in the forum. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Terry. And now we'll ask Earl Pomeroy to please come forward. Someone we really don't need to introduce.
All right, I need a little PowerPoint help here. My old job, I never used PowerPoint. It's part of my transition to the private sector. Monday of Thanksgiving week. All over the country, people will be watching these cooking shows, learning how to prepare some elaborate facet of their Thanksgiving dinner. But here in Devil's Lake at dinner time, we fill an auditorium with people learning how to cook diesel from Bakken crude. This is a very special community, and I think your interest in the topic tonight is reflective of the level of community engagement that is truly exceptional. What a privilege it was for me to represent North Dakota for 9 terms in Congress, dealing with all of the communities and all of their issues. But of course, the lake, on its unending rise through almost the entire time I was in Congress, presented year after year another difficult set of problems that none of us had ever encountered before. Well, working it through, creatively thinking, and certainly with some assistance from a lot of local initiative and some federal funds to boot, we really steered this community through your efforts through just about as difficult stretch as any community could do. So when I was called at my now law office in Alston Bird to discuss the project that was going to be put before the city, do they want to host a refinery? What struck me was this is an absolutely interesting turning of the page. We're not trying to fight and to preserve as best we could under the unrelenting flood of the lake, much of what we had. This is actually looking forward at new opportunities, new things. And it's kind of like the fun of playing offense versus defense. This may or may not be a project the community wants, but it's fun to think about instead of that flood all the time. And so I'm happy to be here. You know, the business, as reflected in Mr. Woolley's presentation, is much of what city leaders have seen in terms of the proposal and its feasibility and economic strength. The city asks itself, well, who the hell knows? It's very, very difficult, detailed, sophisticated engineering information has been put before the city, and I commend the city for having some sense of we know what we know what we don't know, and what we don't know we better get help to take a look at. That really describes what a due diligence review is all about. Having the experts come in to look at the proposal, to get the expertise in the answer about whether it's a proposal that should move forward or not. Now, the law firm where I've worked since leaving Congress, Alston Bird's a firm of about 850 lawyers all around the country, of a very substantial environmental practice in Los Angeles. I'll talk about it in a little bit. And so in calling me, it was a recognition that I knew Devil's Lake very well, but perhaps as important or more important, worked now in a place where expertise could be drawn upon to really sort out the questions that really must be addressed at the beginning. Should we take a further look at this proposal? So a due diligence review, which is very common for communities to undertake when presented with a very substantial and complicated development proposal, involves the following elements: a look at the feasibility of the project, a qualification of the principles behind the project, adequacy of capital in support of the project, and the degree of environmental impact. It's not a permitting review, as our representative of the North Dakota State Health Department just reflected. That will be the review that occurs at the end of the process. This is a review at the beginning of the process, basically to assess whether this might be within the range of, again, what should be explored more fully. Let's talk about those individual elements just for a moment. Feasibility of the project. Does its scope and design make sense? Again, this is something for experts to determine, and the experts will be brought to bear in the course of this due diligence review. How about its production logistics? Does the location make sense? Where are the targeted markets for the product to come out of this refinery? And is there adequate capital to support the whole venture? Qualification of principles. We want to know that those who've stepped forward to invest and build the project have got the experience, the capability, the track record. This isn't unlike almost a loan underwriter's review in a bank. You're not looking for capital, but still, you're going to end up with a very substantial city partner here if you go forward. You've got to check them out and check them out at the beginning. Triad. Do they have the capability to perform the engineering construction of the project? Do they have relevant experience? Eagles Ledge. Does it have capacity to manage and capitalize the project, both during construction and in its operational phase? Adequacy of capital. The community will need to know that the capital in support of the project matches the economic challenges of building and then operating a refinery. Sometimes refineries, they run at small margins, they may, and market prices vary. Sometimes operating at a loss, sometimes at a profit. Do they have the carrying capital to make this an enduring project? It's not just about building the project, it's about long-term operation. And environmental impact. And here, it's not that the due diligence does the same kind of evaluation of the permitting. There are public officials that do that evaluation, but we basically look at the permitting. Does the permitting capture in comprehensive fashion the public interests that you care about? Some of them have been mentioned. Water, handling wastewater, odor, the other kinds of obvious things you'd think about with the project of this case. Are they covered in a permitting framework? You basically develop a matrix of the various permits that attach and see whether there's anything else that Devil's Lake as a locality might be wanting to look at, not adequately covered by the permitting, and if so, then that needs additional investigation. So these are the kinds of reviews the city would do before starting the permitting process, just to make sure they're adequately protected by the permitting process. And then assessing the environmental impact in a general way. Due diligence is not, again, the thorough environmental review of the permitting, but it is the first cut to determine the basic legitimacy and soundness of the project. All right? Those are tasks that require some expertise. So let me tell you a little bit about the two firms that are involved. First, Alston & Bird. I've mentioned them a bit. This is the law firm in which I work. Within Alston Bird, I would talk about two principal individuals that would be working on this case. Myself, drawing upon not my expertise as an environmental reviewer or engineer, of course not, but my thorough understanding of this community from the years of working with you on the projects and the other challenges we've talked about with the water. The lead partner in the environmental practice is Jocelyn Thompson, a thoroughly experienced lawyer in our LA office whose principal work is permitting, most often on behalf of refineries. More recently, she is involved, just for an example, in the course of her work on 3 different refinery initiatives that want to take Bakken oil into California on rail and refine it after retrofitting their refineries to handle Bakken crude, which is a different type of crude than basically the heavier type crude that the infrastructure out there is designed to build. Well, if you can imagine the environmental regulatory framework in California, I mean, it is intense. And so the rail car controversy that from time to time is attached to the movement of Bakken oil has been an intense project. That's the kind of work she does. Her work specifically on this project would be an assessment of the existing permitting and whether and how that matches up with every question the community needs to know. The next, but there's still operations about what Bob Woolley is talking about. The design of the project, the modular construction, the innovations that are being proposed with this system that really involve, you need some engineers, not lawyers, to look at this one. And so we propose to bring in addition, the firm, a Houston-based oil-related consultancy, the firm known as Baker O'Brien. Their business is extensively evaluating projects. They do it on behalf of project developers. They do it on behalf of financiers. They do it on behalf of municipalities. So they have the expertise to take a look at these projects. Specifically, the individuals in the firm that I would propose for team members would be Daniel Fennelt. He has an MBA in finance, a degree in chemical engineering, and substantial operations and consulting experience. He'd be joined by Kevin Waguspak, who has, again, himself very extensive operational experience making projects work, building projects, and then for the last 22 years as consultant, which has allowed him to see a great variety of projects. So there are people that can, with an extraordinarily knowledgeable eye, evaluate every facet of this proposal. The city has thought, as part of the due diligence effort in evaluating the proposal, we ought to bring on the experts. I've been involved in coordinating this rounding up of the experts and getting them ready to go on this project, and be happy to talk with you more fully about that during the question and answer period. Thank you very much. It's good to be back in Devil's Lake.
Thank you very much, Earl. It is good to have you back in North Dakota. And our last presenter is Guy Dissetel, who is the president of Forward DL.
Thank you, Dennis. We're running a bit long, so I'll move right along. I wish to speak to your trust and accountability from the perspective of Forward Devil's Lake. Our organization dates back to the 1950s when the likes of Mike Schwann, Fred Hohog, Izzy LaFleur, Bob Whitney, Lloyd and Floyd Strummy, Dave Glickson, Bill Jerome, and others saw the need for an economic development arm to assist the city. It was at that time that the industrial park west of town on Highway 2 was born. Now economic development organizations are commonplace in towns all across America. Our organization consists of 17 volunteers, and Rachel is our executive day-to-day running operations. Our role is to seek out, vet, and do the legwork for potential projects and to report our findings to the City Commission so they can make an informed decision. Business deals of this nature must be handled in a confidential manner, and only at the appropriate time are we allowed to go to the public. For this reason, the North Dakota Century Code affords us the privilege to go into executive session for high-level confidential discussions. Oftentimes, signing specific confidentiality documents is required of us. Common incentives for us to offer our prospective projects are no cost or low cost land, no cost or reduced cost building occupancies, property tax abatements, job creation incentives, interest buydowns. The list is quite lengthy in the the economic development business. I think it's important to point out with that laundry list I went over that Eagles Ledge has asked for no concessions or incentives from us at this point. The Forward Devils Lake Board responsibility is to expand the economic base of our region. The 100 direct, high-paying technical jobs of Eagles Ledge and 400 indirect related jobs is exactly what Forward Devils Lake strives for. Imagine the Eagles Ledge engineer moving to town, her husband working at a local car dealership, and their 3 children in our schools working at Lever's and McDonald's and Applebee's. Imagine the skilled equipment operator moving to town. His wife is a nurse, their children working at our restaurants, maybe attending Lake Region State College. Now we have an economic engine cranked up and growing our base. Eagles Ledge has been upfront with us that for this upper 100 skilled level, they don't expect to tap the local labor market. But instead, they were moving this level in from the outside. Okay, now we're really building momentum. So, as an example of our role in a typical deal, we recently had discussions with a plastic pipe company from Missouri. They had narrowed their search to North Dakota locations in Jamestown, Stanley, and Devils Lake. We had numerous meetings with them, including face-to-face here in Devils Lake. We made an extensive proposal to them, all in confidence. Only upon their acceptance would we have gone public and brought it to the City Commission for approval. This is how the process works. Every community follows this protocol. In the end, we were unable to come to terms with this company. Forward Devils Lake business is not done in secrecy, instead in a very confidential business manner. These prospective companies do not and will not agree to share their business plans and trade secrets with the public in these early stages of development. Confidentiality is the key commodity for us, much like an attorney-client privilege, in that confidentiality is the key ingredient. Now, a success story of this example is right before us in Ultra Green. An employer that is running 3 shifts and gearing up to the 400 worker level. Ultra Green vetted numerous U.S. communities and came down to Amarillo, Texas, and Devils Lake. They had to be mindful of U.S. competitors, China supply relations, China business commitments, U.S. customers, and confidentiality was absolutely paramount to them. We had to keep that project under wraps. Only until negotiations advanced did they give us the green light to approach the City Commission with their project. This is how the economic process has to work. Confidentiality is the key, crucial ingredient. Now, fast forward to the Eagles Ledge project and the prospect of bringing to Devils Lake a plant to manufacture diesel fuel. The important thing to understand is that we have worked on 2 different projects before getting to this point. 2 different companies, 2 different approaches, one traditional and one not so traditional, referring to Eagles Ledge and American Energy Holdings, respectively. About a year ago, American Energy Holdings came out with a press release announcing that they were pursuing a refinery project in Devils Lake. This came as a total surprise to us. It was inappropriate and caught us all off guard. In complete contrast, about 3 months ago, we were approached by Eagles Ledge, and our initial dealings were private and confidential. Not until Eagles Ledge was ready to shift from confidential meetings with investors, business partners, and state agencies were we able to say anything. This explains why we were not communicating about this project to this point. When we came to the City Commission to request a letter of support, that was our first opportunity to bring this out in the open. It is important to note that this action by the City Commission was simply a sign of support for the city, that they were open to the idea of a refinery as an economic development project. It was non-binding. It had conditions that included EPA and health department regulations, sensitivity to the environment, agriculture, the lake, and wildlife. An oversight was not listing the citizens' health, but this is very much a priority for Forward Devils Lake now as it is then as it is now. This letter of support has been misconstrued as a stamp of approval, and that it's a done deal. Folks, that's the furthest thing from the truth. We are still in the infancy stages of this project. We all agree that what has elevated the interest in this project is that it's not a widget factory, it's going to manufacture diesel fuel. We get that loud and clear, and we fully understand your concern. Our responsibility to the citizens of Devils Lake is under heightened scrutiny, and that is how it should be. We were under no legal requirement to have this public meeting, but instead have opted to have it to get you informed, hear your input, and to put you in a position for public buy-in and support. Building a plant to manufacture diesel fuel is a long, laborious process. It requires a lot of scrutiny through a long permitting process. It was brought to our attention that this appeared to go from the batter's box to third base overnight, and that the Commission's letter of support put a stamp of approval on this, and that it was a done deal. People, this project has a long, long, long journey ahead of it. So that's the mechanics of Forward Devils Lake. In the Mayor's comments, he will expand on the next level of opportunity for public input beyond tonight's session. We want to keep you informed every step of the way now that we have reached this point. Another subject I would like to briefly address is the wish for a public vote. Please allow me to illustrate it in this manner. We elect Senator Elke, Representatives Johnson, and Hofstede to act as our voice in Bismarck. We vote them in because we trust them. We hold them accountable to conduct the business on our behalf. Likewise, we vote in our city and county commissioners to conduct the business at hand, and we must trust them. We can challenge them, hold them accountable at each election cycle. This is how the democratic process must work. We have voted in our city commissioners and mayor and given them the responsibility of making this decision, but only after the processes have been followed and complied to. I'm confident that they will have the knowledge to make an informed decision. I'm hopeful that I've clarified for you the process of economic development and the decision-making process. And thank you for your trust and concern for this great city of ours.
Thank you very much, Guy. I think we owe all of our presenters a round of applause for the tremendous information they packaged. As we move into the second component and get into the Q&A portion of the evening, just to go back and check again the ground rules on your cards. It says to come to the standing mic. Because of the setup of the room, we're going to actually have 3 roving mics. We would ask you to introduce yourself, and if there is an affiliation with any organization, as appropriate to add that as well. We would ask you to address your question to any specific member of the panel. If your question is for more than 2 members of the panel, to indicate that as well. We've indicated that we would look at a 3-minute window for questioning, and to facilitate this, given the size of the group, we're going to move from the front of the room and then literally go row by row to the back and then to the balcony. If you have multiple questions, we would ask you to hold your question after the first round so that everybody gets a chance, and then we'll come back and cycle through as appropriate. We want to hear from all, and we want to, as time permits, again, come back and go through, cycle ahead through the entire room and also into the balcony as well. And again, if you have questions that are real personal kinds of questions that you would prefer not to share in this kind of an audience, we would encourage you to either to write those in the back of the little cards, or to let Rachel know for answering at a later moment. Galen, you had some additional comments.
Just a couple of things. We're going to try follow a process tonight, because with these many people, our goal is to get everybody out there who has a question to be able to ask one for sure, and maybe a couple if we have time to do that. So if you're one of those people who came tonight with 25 questions on your tablet, I would pick out your most important question you want to ask first, because we're going to go through the entire room and give everybody an opportunity to ask a question before we come back and give you an opportunity to ask a second question. When you ask a question, we ask that you stand up. We have 2 microphone tenders who will get a microphone to you. The mics have to be up close to your mouth in order to work, so don't hold them away from you. We want you to introduce yourself. If you're here representing an organization or a business or a state agency, please tell us that. Then indicate who you're asking the question of on the panel. If you don't know who to ask the question of on the panel, you can say this question is for the panel in general. Ask your question, the panel members will answer it, and then we'll move on to the next person. We will start here with the front row. Is there anybody in the front row who has a question? Please raise your hand. No one in the front row. We'll go to row B. Anybody in row B who has a question? Okay.
Hello, my name is Daryl Bachmeyer. I work for True North Steel out of Fargo, North Dakota. We provide a lot of structural steel supports and modules to some of the refineries in Montana and also the one in Dickinson. I noticed in the paper there was a budget on this one of $200 million, and knowing a little bit about the other refineries in the region, this one seems to be less expensive, and I'm just wondering how that is. How are you basing your basing your budgets off of?
I can't speak for the other refiners, because I know nothing about how well or not they manage their jobs. But having built the first modular refinery in North America several years ago, very successfully, we have taken a budget which utilizes current pricing for equipment and the assembly of modules and for the field costs. And our contract strategy will be one that we've employed before, and we know of True North Steel and your extreme capabilities. Perhaps you would fit into that formula. We hope so. Thank you very much.
Anybody else in row 2 have a question?
I'm Rick LaFleur. I'm a lifelong resident of Devils Lake. I got an observation and a question. And my question, I guess, would be for Mr. Woolley. My observation was I sat on College Drive and watched all the cars come on out here, but I didn't see anybody walking to get here. So my question is, what is the difference in the carbon footprint of shipping oil to a refinery some distance away of older construction versus one that's here with the latest technology, what is the difference of the impact in the transportation there, getting the fuel back here? Because really, this isn't about anybody who isn't a customer of the oil industry. My observation, everyone in here is. It's more of an observation of what's the correct thing to do when it comes to the least impact to the environment, and not just in my backyard. I don't want it. So that's my question.
Thank you. That's a very sensible and comprehensive question. And the answer in general terms is minimize the distance that you ship things, use local feedstock and supply local markets, and use the very latest technology that you can. Even in the last 10 years, the technology of refining oil has changed substantially. What changes the most are catalyst formulations, and there are a lot of catalysts that are used in a refinery process. So you talk about the carbon footprint, and that's, in my view, exactly, and it makes common sense, I think, of how you minimize it. Refine it at home and use it at home.
We have one more question from roll 2.
This question is from David Zimmerman. He is a local educator. He says, I am a long-term resident of Devil's Lake and do not have a business affiliation and can see the benefits of diversifying the economy responsibly and support the development of the North Dakota resources in the long-range betterment of the surrounding communities. What are the long-term benefits for the betterment of the community with this oil refinery proposal? If the project gains approval, how long will the community see those benefits?
At this point, we can't put a number as to what it is exactly, the dollar amount that can impact our community. But what we do know is that there is obviously a tax incentive. There is a tax base that can increase and possibly potentially reduce our local costs. At that point, we also need to consider the 100 jobs that this could possibly create, along with the 4 to 6 spin-off jobs that had been mentioned for every refinery position. We haven't taken into the dollar value in which that incorporates for our community. That's buying houses, buying groceries, eating at our restaurants, new local citizens that are good citizens for our community. There have been no financial discussions to the point of what it is that Devil's Lake is requiring or asking of the refinery. But at this point, we're at the very beginning stages, and we hope to sit down in the near future and to be having some of these discussions that can help Devil's Lake in a long-term commitment.
And Boris, did you want to add to that also? Or Mike?
Yeah, one thing, considering the question is coming from an educator, there again I referred to earlier that we were losing population for a while. Now we're probably at a point where we're about 725 to 750,000 people in the state, up from maybe 640, 650. But we're also seeing and especially in places like northwestern North Dakota, a lot of schools being built. In Bismarck, we're building additional schools, a high school and elementary schools. And that's one thing that we have to remember, that a project like this does, not only the direct employment, but the indirect employment. We're going to be looking at more students in the Dickinson school system, and probably too students at Lake Region State College. So it really is a benefit to the community from that standpoint as well.
Any other questions from roll 2?
Good evening. My name is Jeff Wall. I went to grade school here and high school here in Devil's Lake, and I moved away in 1990 for 6 years, and I moved to Mandan, North Dakota. And I worked about 1.5 miles from the refinery in Mandan, and not one day did we smell anything or have any debris of any kind on the vehicles where I was working at, and it was never a factor. The only factor was there were very nice people that worked at that refinery and had good retirements and supported the community, and so I do back the local government on what they're doing, and I'm sure they'll make the right decision for all of us.
Thank you. Row number C. Any questions? Nope. Okay.
Popular row.
Reg Herman from Brinsmead. I'm not sure who to ask this question of, but the last few years we've had at least 2 instances where we had great difficulty getting diesel fuel. One time it came in from Nebraska, so we responded by adding a lot of storage on our farm, and we try to store about 9 months at all times. 2 questions. One is, would you explain how it would move into the local pipeline or the local supply chain? And secondly, would it likely safen our supply?
I didn't hear the second part of your question. Could you repeat that for me?
I wanted to know if it would likely stabilize the supply in the local community.
And
Yeah.
safen.
Absolutely. It's one of the advantages, and the earlier question was responded to with a similar answer. It's if you have crude oil with which you are blessed, you do have it here, and if you can manufacture it for a local market, you minimize the need that you have for storage and transportation, and you increase the security of supply by that means. So one of the great benefits from having your own refinery, so to speak, is you'll be first in line for the product that comes from it. Does that answer your question appropriately? Well, if it's available for sale, it's the marketing job from the refinery to go out and find the customers and provide it to them. There are a lot of independent marketers who get product wherever they can get the best deal. And those independent marketers would be the first ones that we would approach. There are railroads that need fuel. There are jet fuel requirements from military bases, and there are diesel requirements from military bases, and in this area as well. And those are markets which we would seek to supply because we can do so effectively and competitively, and by having the refinery here. If the refinery's not here, it has to come from the Gulf Coast or from Kansas, because the refineries that are here are insufficient to supply the needs. I'm not sure, did I answer your question that time? Close is pretty darn good. Thank you very much.
We have a couple additional comments.
Bob, if I could add on to that, in our earlier discussions, you had mentioned it would not pipeline out of here. This is such a clean product that they would not put it into a contaminated pipeline. It would be railed out or trucked out.
Well, and just one other point too. Last year, according to Mike Rood with the North Dakota Petroleum Marketers Association, from time to time there were shortages of about 50,000 barrels a day between the amount that's used in the oil patch plus ag for both harvest and planting. And so with the refinery like this, you're looking at maybe 6,000-7,000 barrels a day of diesel. So there's still additional room for the potential for another refinery, but this just helps that that imbalance of supply of diesel from time to time.
Yeah, and just to add to that, when I briefly touched on why North Dakota, The big reason here is not only the crude supply, but because there is an actual in-state demand. And part of good business is obviously there's no point in transporting this across the world or across state lines if we have a customer base here. So the objective here is not only a long-term benefit to the community economically and through employment, but also through supply. So, there was a couple questions earlier regarding whether there was going to be stability of supply. That's the intent. The intent is to bring product into the local markets, and we've already had different distributors approach us, and with the intent of wanting to offtake the end product if we get there.
Anybody else from roll B? Okay, we're moving on to roll C.
Good evening. My name is Scott Provotsky. I'm the superintendent of Devils Lake Public Schools, and I just want to make sure that the comments I make this evening are my comments, and they don't necessarily reflect my board members, as I see a few of them sitting around the room. I just want to make a few comments. I support the city's investigating this project and going out and trying to enhance the economic growth in our community. 100 new jobs, well-paying jobs for our community, and the spin-off jobs that can be created off of those are welcome. As a school district and any other taxing entity, we can all gain by the increased tax base, so we welcome that. I came here this evening to learn a little bit about this project because just as many of you here, I'm convinced and I have faith that our city leaders are and will do diligence for this project. I believe that they have the same interests that all of us have in enhancing the economic growth of our community while protecting the environmental integrity that we have with our paradise here in Devils Lake. And I just want to give the city leaders that support and hope they will continue to proceed what's best for our community. Thank you.
I have more of a statement than a question. My name is Tom Haar, and I'm the General Manager, CEO of Farmers Union Oil Company in Devils Lake, North Dakota. We have locations located in Devils Lake, Lakota, Michigan, Warwick, and Macville, all within the Lake Region area. We are a locally owned and operated cooperative that has been in business for 84 years. For my last 10 years in the petroleum industry, we have been fighting product outages at all of the terminals around our area due to refinery capacity being cut by nearly 28%. The demand for diesel fuel has increased significantly while the gasoline consumption is down. This is following the national trend. For me, keeping a steady, consistent supply of products at a reasonable price to our customers is our #1 goal and priority. Having to have our transports drive to Minneapolis, Minnesota, Billings, Montana, and Laurel, Montana to get diesel is expensive and inefficient for all of our parties concerned. I am thrilled for us and our community to have the opportunity to have this 20,000-gallon barrel a day refinery to be built here. Not only will this help our situation on product supply, it would help the lack of employees available to work. With the added people and families being brought in to run this facility, the potential for new employees will be more than welcome from my point of view. I'm sure many other businesses and managers would agree. One concern I've heard about the new refinery is the potential smell from the crude oil. There's not been a new refinery built in the United States since 1975. The technology in this industry has increased immensely since then. Because this is a distillate and diesel-only refinery, and we'll be refining light sweet crude instead of heavy sour crude, there will be little to no odor created from this refinery. This is part of the industry that I know. In comparison, the cars of today are much more efficient and better built than the cars built in the mid-70s. I think everyone would agree. I also do not believe that a 20,000 barrel a day refinery will fly under the radar of the EPA. That equates to 840,000 gallons a day and 306 million gallons a year. We only distribute 10 million gallons of product a year and get inspected regularly by the EPA. I believe all the rules and regulations will be followed by Eagles Ledge. I hope tonight's public meeting puts to rest a lot of rumors and myths about this industry, and I am here to give the full support and endorsement from Farmers Union Oil Company of Devils Lake towards the completion of this project. Thank you.
My back is out. All right. My name is Jessica Mead Ramey. First of all, the Lost Grass Refinery in Alberta is in violation at this time with their tailing ponds, as is the Alberta Clippers 67 pipeline. It is a known fact from international shipping reports and futures, petroleum oil refinery journal, and published paper data, worldwide financial companies and the largest law firms in both the United States, Canada, and Europe, that the following: U.S. diesel exports have doubled in the past year. U.S. refineries are ramping up refinery of middle distillates for diesel U.S. export. There needs to be a comment made on this as far as due diligence and how much is being kept in the state of North Dakota, as well as the questionable record of Triad Engineering. Multiple federal lawsuits in West Virginia. Triad of West Virginia is Triad of Canada. Triad of Canada is Triad worldwide. Dr. Bailey also worked in Libya. At what point did Dr. Bailey work in Libya? When it was an enemy of the United States of America under Muammar Gaddafi? I would like an answer to this question.
You asked several questions there. Let me begin by saying that your reference to Triad does not apply to Triad engineers. There are other companies called Triad. They're not related to us in any way. In terms of the manufacturing of diesel fuel, certainly people are going to head for that market because it's a good market. It needs to be filled, and other people will do it. We're suggesting let's do it first in Devil's Lake.
Any other questions? Roll 3.
And I can just touch on Dr. Bailey's position. Dr. Bailey worked for Exxon, Arabian Gulf. He was positioned in a number of locations globally. He worked for Exxon, not for the Libyan government in any way. We brought Dr. Bailey on as our CEO of energy operations for the fact of his impeccable history and track record. We didn't look at the fact of where he worked. He was positioned as part of the organization. I cannot answer that. I'm not sure.
My name is Gerald Nelson. I've lived in Devil's Lake for 78 years. Except for the 4 years I was proud to serve in the United States Navy. I'd like to make a quick observation to forward Devil's Lake. I'm sure you people are really gung-ho, but your track record isn't the best in Devil's Lake, as far as I'm concerned. The comment I have to Enbridge is, I live a half a mile from the site that this will be built on. My concern would be, will the truck route, do you know anything about, will that be paved? Because the dust would be just unbearable if it's not. Yeah,
we are looking at paving that truck route. We are obviously going to do everything in our power to minimize the surrounding area around the footprint. And we will work closely with the City Commission and the local community. You know, from when we started this process, our key and only objective here was to come and you know, our intent was to put something into North Dakota as far as a refinery is concerned because of the supply surplus and the diesel demand. It makes economic sense. But we want to go somewhere where we're wanted. You know, there is absolutely no benefit to us in any way of coming in and investing, whether it's $200 or $300 or $400 million, and be dealing with people that view us as an enemy. We're here to partner with the community and with the city of Devil's Lake. We're looking at a long-term mutual benefit, and that is the first and last objective of Eagles Ledge and American Dakota Refinery.
If I could briefly address the comment about Forward Devil's Lake, economic development is a tough business. I don't know of any community that bats 1,000, but we're not going to quit trying. This is a volunteer board trying to expand the economic base of our community. We're trying our best, and we're going to keep trying. We will not fold our tent.
Other questions, roll C. If not, we'll move on to roll D. Please raise your hands.
Good evening. My name is Kyle Blanchfield. I own Woodland Resort on the shores of Devil's Lake, and the $100 million question is, will this have an adverse effect to the body of Devil's Lake, the lake proper, right? And so, you know, you can't walk down the street without having somebody, you know, come up to me and, aren't you concerned about this refinery? I mean, it could ruin the lake. And at first I'm like, you know, well, yeah, it's my living. It's, you know, I'm a third generation, and I hope there's a fourth generation behind me at our property. So I thought, well, before I make a quick reaction to that question, I just started doing some research on it. And the closest example that we have of this would be the Mandan Refinery. If you ever drive by the Mandan Refinery, it's right next to the Missouri River system. So my question to Terry Odor is, to your knowledge, since the history of the Mandan Refinery, since it's been established where its current location is, has there ever been a case where there's been an oil spill or adverse effect to the Missouri River system? To follow up behind that would be, if I look at the correlation from the location of the refinery to the actual lake, and this after listening to the contingency programs to collect up spills and to deal with all that between dikes and containment ponds and liners, and the fact that it's got some distance between there and the lake, plus we have our existing dike that is in its own way a retaining system in its own right. Are there other telltale signs, for example, water table testing and other things to make darn sure that this would never be an adverse, create an adverse climate for our very precious $100 million a year resource that's just right outside the door?
Thank you for your question. The refinery in Mandan has been operating since, I believe, 1954. I started my job in the Air Quality Division in 1976, so I can't speak much before that time. And plus, I'm the air quality guy, but I do work very closely with the water quality people. To my knowledge, I suspect there's been spills over the years in the early days specifically, but I'm not aware of anything that has, leaked into the Missouri River. The folks in the Water Quality Division, they inspect that source routinely as well as the air quality folks. We've worked closely with that refinery over the years. I know they even have their own fire training within that the source itself. So they do a lot of the due diligence themselves among themselves to make sure that they're meeting all the permit requirements. And trust me, the permit requirements have certainly gotten more stringent over the years. And you can say what, some people like EPA, some people don't. I've worked with EPA, my entire career. And I've been on opposite sides of the fence with them too, but I can say this, that EPA is there to do their job as well as we are. And with that in mind, if something happens there, we're certainly going to find out about it and rectify that through permits and even enforcement action if necessary.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I'm Doug Golding. I live in Devil's Lake, and I can hold the microphone closer. Oh. I'm Doug Golding. I live in Devil's Lake. I have a question for Mr. Eau Claire and Mr. Pomeroy. The first one I'll direct to Mr. Eau Claire. When you review the air quality emissions permit that's submitted for this refinery, do you take into account the proximity of the emission site to the city of Devil's Lake?
Our review includes that. It's a very thorough review. We look to see, what the emissions are, what pollutant they're emitting. Many times we do a dispersion modeling analysis, which is a dispersion model that EPA approves of, that our state approves of, and we're comfortable that and trust that it's giving us, the answers that we're seeking. And then we compare, what that model shows us to the ambient air quality standards, as I spoke of before, to ensure that it's going to meet those standards. The facility itself, once again, not only has to meet ambient air quality standards, but it also has to meet what's called new source performance standards that are specific regulations for refineries. And those are getting tougher all the time. And indeed they should be, because there's been problems, in way in the past. But I think over the years that both the state and EPA has been looking at that, I think we're doing a fairly good job of ensuring that the facility meets those compliance standards.
So basically you would do the same analysis if the oil refinery was in Brinsmade as it is a mile and a half from Devil's Lake. Isn't that correct?
It's not up to us to identify where the facility is, obviously. That's up to the company. We have no siting requirements or anything. That's up to the company. But our analysis will look at it doesn't matter to us where it's located. It's the emissions that come from it and what impact those emissions have around the surrounding community, whether it be Devil's Lake or someplace else.
So the siting requirements then would be a determination to bring to the local government and the local zoning authority. Would that be correct?
I guess I'm not sure what the local zoning requirements are. That is probably something that's better answered by the city.
Okay. And then for Mr. Pomeroy, I'm disappointed you don't remember me from UND, but that's water under the bridge. I was on interfraternity council with you, Earl. Come on.
There's a lot about my years at UND.
It was only 40 years ago. Come on. Who's your client?
I've been contacted by Devil's Lake Forward, and the engagement is on behalf of the city.
Okay, who's going to pay your bill?
The process of due diligence is funded by municipalities in various ways. One way under contemplation is to have the developer who makes the proposal in the end endure the cost of due diligence, because after all, these would not be funds expended by the city, but for the proposal being placed on a store step.
Okay, do you have a scoping document that you can share with the public? Or a representation of your engagement letter or something like that?
Right. The engagement letter has not been finalized and would be material that would be held by the client, in this case Devil's Lake Forward, and would, you'd want to access it through them.
Okay, and I just want to tell Guy I appreciate the presentation on behalf of Forward Devil's Lake. I do have one disappointment, and that is there has not been a presentation on water quality and water quality permitting and how that's going to work. And I think that's a pretty big issue for a lot of people here, and I would hope that Forward Devils Lake could address this pretty soon. Thank you.
If I may, if I could just respond to the last comment. Once again, I understand I'm the air quality guy, but we do have a water quality division too. And the permit process that I talked about for air quality is very similar to water quality. They would do, very similar type things to any emissions that would be going into not only groundwater but surface water as well. So that would be addressed.
Anybody else? Roll D.
Ray Slutland, resident of North Creel Township. At the present time, this site is in North Creel, and if this proposed project goes through, are you anticipating that you will be annexed, or that you would request being annexed into the city, or are you looking at it to remain in North Creel?
It is the intent that, yes, we would take it to zoning and annexing to annex it along with our new industrial park for heavy industrial, contingent on this project coming forth and finalizing.
Any other questions? Roll D. We'll go to row E. Please raise your hand if you have a question.
Okay. Colin Evenson, I am not a representative of the Sahara Club, even though I have their shirt on. I stand with them in their fight against the Keystone and bringing in toxic tar sand from Canada. At first, when this came, I had a lot of concerns about whether they were going to be using tar sand, not oil, tar. And as it stands now, the only contracts that the refinery in Dickinson has is for tar. And the only contract, it's not Bakken, it's tar. And the refinery in Newtown, also the only contract is tar. So I wrote a couple articles, got a lot of information. I got a call last night from an individual who used to have a company that inspected steel pipe out in western North Dakota. And he said that the steel pipe that's made in China is very inferior. And you would never see Chinese-made pipe used in Canada, either in refineries or in pipelines. And so, addressing the gentleman from Fargo about how they can produce this so cheaply, it's cheap, inferior China steel. And Mr. Blanchfield, the refinery in Mandan was made with good, strong U.S. steel. So this creates a real risk when this inferior Chinese steel fractures and blows tar all over. Mr. Pomeroy, who is responsible after the $1 million cleanup liability is met by the refinery, who has to pay for the other $10 million in cleanup costs?
So it's a question directed to me, but I do not know the answer to that. They expect there's bonding requirements and the rest of it, but the facet I'm representing on the panel, due diligence, would examine operational details relative to ability to deal with the financial liabilities that might flow from something of that nature. But at this juncture, I can't answer your question.
As far as the comment that you had as to where the crude is coming from for the Dakota Prairie Refinery near Dickinson. It's not tar sands. It is crude oil from the Bakken. So I don't know where you're getting your information, but it's inaccurate.
And just a further comment to that is, on behalf of ADR, we're building a clean fuels refinery that is focused on Bakken light crude. If we wanted to do Alberta product, why would we build in North Dakota? We would be putting that up there. You already don't have the capacity for transport of any oil, anything even resembling a capacity that's being produced in North Dakota. Our focus here is 100% Bakken crude.
Anyone else, roll E.
If I may just add, during our presentation, we mentioned that all piping is going to be governed by either B31.1 or 31.3, which does not, under any circumstance, allow the use of inferior materials, period.
Last chance, roll E. We'll move on to roll F.
Okay, I guess I'll start. My name is Jim Chatton. My family and I have resided here 19 years in Devil's Lake. I'm not representing anyone except ourselves. I guess my question is, why so close to Devil's Lake? If it's 1.5 miles, 2 miles out, if there's some sort of catastrophic incident at this site, are there plans to evacuate a part or all of Devil's Lake to get us out of the way? Where are we going to go? I'm talking anywhere from a major fire to terrorist act, anything like that. That could happen. And we seem to be very close and downwind of this proposed site. So I guess I'd propose that question to North Dakota State Health Department. And as a follow-on, a very specific question for Mr. Woolley. Will there be, between the lake and the proposed site, monitoring wells in the ground to see if there is any migration of pollutants towards the lake?
I guess I'll take the first question, being it was directed at me. The Department of Health does not have any jurisdiction, once again, as to where the site locates. That's up to the company and whoever they're buying the property from. So irregardless, though, of where it's located, the department will do a thorough review to identify what the emissions are and, once again, what the impact of the emissions would be, both from an air quality perspective as well as water quality.
Yes, and I think the use of monitoring wells would be prudent and required. Okay, thank you.
My name is Marion Chatton, and I'm from Devil's Lake, too. And I guess my question also is to you, Mr. Woolley. I appreciate that your company is planning to use the latest technologies to minimize pollution and the use of water and all that in your plant. But I wonder if you could tell me how much you anticipate in the way of producing hazardous waste and hazardous waste water, say per day, how many pounds per day, and how long that will be stored on site, and then how it would be disposed of and where it would be disposed of. But and also finally, what do you anticipate to be the economic life of this refinery here? Say 20 years or whatever that would be. And then what happens when it's closed or decommissioned? What happens to that site?
To answer your last question, the economic life of a refinery is 20 years, but the El Segundo refinery in El Segundo, Los Angeles, in the middle of the city, was first started in 1907, and it's still running. So the practical life with proper maintenance goes on and on and on and on, as long as the owner is interested in operating the refinery. And your first question was asking about the technology that we're going to use to clarify the water before we return it to the environment, and what we're going to do to ensure that there's clean air. Well, rather than go through each step of technology, let me say first that the regulations in the air permit and the water permits will be stipulated by the state, and they will certainly acknowledge every requirement that EPA has. So that's the first thing. The refinery cannot operate if it exceeds any of those limitations. And as far as the availability of technology is concerned, it's the technology that's available is known to EPA and to the State Department of Health, and they establish their regulations based on the ability of the technology to perform. For example, the water treatment, as I had endeavored to mention earlier, the water treatment will, where it had been potentially contaminated with any oil or mixed with any oil, would end up going through a wastewater treatment unit before it's released to a holding pond, and then in the holding pond you have the opportunity to check the water and make sure that it meets all the requirements established by the state before it's released to the municipal water treating system. So I think that you have assurance from the owner and from the regulators that these limits are going to be, that are specified in our permits, are going to be achieved. Well, it's hard to say because, yeah, solid waste, mainly where it would come from, would be from the settling ponds in the wastewater treating unit. And we haven't done the engineering yet, so I'll refer back to a previous similar job, probably about 96 pounds a day. And waste weighs about 150 pounds per cubic feet, so less than a cubic foot a day, just to put that in perspective. But the firm design will specify that more clearly and certainly, and it will be subjected to the scrutiny of the regulators. Thank you for your question.
We are at 8:05. We had promised you to be finished by 8 o'clock, but we'll extend the question and answer period. We've had great questions and good comments. We'll extend it another 10 minutes. We'll go till 8:15.
Row F, any more questions?
Yeah, my name is Harold Whitson. I live here in Devils Lake, and my question is about water. In relation to your comment over there about the Missouri River, that's a downstream process. Any kind of wastewater would go downstream away from your community. This is not that kind of situation here. It's going to stay. This lake is not draining nowhere. As far as your labor source, the last two businesses that we've came across here, they're having a hard time finding people to work there. So I don't know where these 100 people are going to be coming from in order to fill your 100. Follow-on workers in this town, that 400, okay? Most of these gentlemen here are already here, okay? They've already got jobs. They're already here, whether they're selling cars or putting in at McDonald's or whatever, okay? So, but my question on the water is the water source that you're going to get, okay? Are you going to be tapping onto the Devils Lake clean water coming in? Are you going to be tapping onto the lake system? Or are you going to be drilling? Or are you going to be tapping onto the rural water system? Okay? The gentleman said that he was going to be pumping about, or needing about 20 gallons a minute. My estimate, that's about over 28,000 gallons. 28,000 gallons a day. Okay, so where are you going to get your water?
Mike Draskar, our city engineer, has been in conversations with us from the very beginning, and he feels that the water supply and demand is well within the means of the city's capabilities, plus still having room for future businesses to take and relocate in Devils Lake. On the jobs position, we actually view this as a positive for Devils Lake. Like was stated earlier, a number of these jobs are probably going to come from outside the community, relocating. As we all know, most people are not going to relocate their family to work at a $15 an hour job. However, people are going to relocate their families to work at these jobs. Therefore, they're not going to come in with just one person on the majority. Most of the time, they're going to be bringing in more than one person with them, whether that be a spouse or multiple children. Those multiple children will maybe work in our retail establishments, our restaurant, service industry, that we are really struggling. We know that. We know that is a huge factor for Devils Lake. But this is one way that we can probably fix it, or at least help in it. Another thing is we know that our school systems, our healthcare, our other industries in Devils Lake that are skilled level, we can't get those jobs filled. We're hoping that a spouse that follows has those credentials, whether they be a nurse, a doctor, a teacher, what have you. But we're hoping that with that, we're able to stabilize the job development in Devils Lake.
If I could just add, regarding the water quantity, the city of Devils Lake has a capacity of 3 million gallons a day. We currently use about 1 million on average. Wintertime, maybe 850, 60,000. Summertime during the sprinkling season, maybe 1.2 million. So there's a lot of capacity out there that we're not using.
Okay, 2 more questions. Any more questions on this roll? If not, we will ask those asking questions to please keep them brief and singular in nature.
Hello, my name is Mary Lundy, and I represent myself and the medical community of Devils Lake. I'll make this as quick as I can. A great presentation, by the way. You answered many of my questions, and I think you guys did a fantastic job. I read Eagles Ledge Energy's recent article in the Journal, and listening to the presentation, I had a couple things jumped out at me. The statement, "We will build a clean fuels refinery using the latest technology to minimize environmental impact." I'm reading between the lines. However minimal the environmental impact is, they are stating it will affect our environment. My concern, every refinery pollutes. You state it will emit what is allowed to emit, but that means it will emit pollution. In light of this, and reading all the articles I can find on refineries in general, I'm still concerned for the health and well-being of the citizens. As a member of Devils Lake's professional medical community with an extensive science and health background, I have to focus on the health of the citizens. The health risks are there, especially with the location. The risks may be limited, but they are there. The refinery location northwest of town will blow emissions over town most days. The location was chosen based on the convenience of the refinery and tax money. Just as Rachel stated, they looked at the MDU, the pipeline, the rail, etc., and the convenience of the refinery business and the aesthetics of the city. But nothing was mentioned about the prevailing winds being taken into account. The allowed emissions will blow over town. I realize there's no medical people on the Forward Devils Lake board nor in the front of the room, and your expertise is to focus on economic advancement, so it is understandable why the location was chosen. It is great for the refinery, but the location, and as a medical person, I have to stand up and say that the location this close and northwest of town is not that great for the health of our citizens. You've assured us many times tonight that it'll be minimal pollution, but I'm still nervous about my children growing up downwind from a refinery. And you stated that this refinery has the newest and latest technology, but could you please outline the specific emissions and all the health implications so I could be more comfortable with the refinery at this location? And as there was no presentation as to the health risks and the emissions, the implications, I have an EPA article with me, and I'm just wondering if the EPA article outlining the emissions with the health risks pertains to this refinery. Thank you very much.
That was a very extensive question. Mike, you did say indicate you wanted to respond.
Now, Terry, from a scientific standpoint, can answer this much better than I can, but the Tesoro refinery has been there for 60 years, and it's northwest of a portion of the Mandan community as well as Bismarck, and I don't know of any health issues that have come about as of that refinery being there for 60 years. And you have to remember that, I mean, it's been updated over the years, but it was built with technology from 60 years ago, whereas this one will be current technology. But there again, Terry probably has a more educated answer than that.
I don't know if it's more educated or not, but let me try. I think that's a very good question that you asked. You pointed out there would be, minimal pollution. Minimal pollution doesn't mean no pollution. We at the health department, deal with that question all the time. That's why EPA sets standards. They recognize there's some emissions coming out of every facility. Even your own home has some emissions from it. But that's why they set standards to protect the health and welfare of the citizens in the community. The standards, take into account that there are emissions coming out, but what is the impact of those emissions? And the studies have shown that if you meet the ambient air quality standards or the water quality standards, that the protection of the community is indeed protected. And we follow those standards that EPA sets. We trust that they're doing a good job in ensuring that the health of the community will be protected if the facility stays below those emission rates that we identify in the permit. So once again, we do take that seriously. We take a hard look at it, and that's why it takes us 3 to 9 months sometimes to analyze what the application is provided.
Part of the due diligence review, part of it looks at operations, principal, capital, the things I mentioned. Part of it looks at adequacy of permitting. And so it's going to be a due diligent review of, is there enough there, enough consumer protection there? The concerns you raised are completely legitimate concerns on this issue and will be evaluated as part of the due diligence also.
Oh. Remember, and Galen's reminder, question, please, and we're trying to compress this time.
Brian Percune, concerned citizen of Devil's Lake. Thanks for that question, Mary. It's great since I live right downwind of prevailing winds of the new proposed site. Looking at the map that Mr. Woolley had in his presentation, we're very close to that. So with that being said, I'll touch on another subject of the logistics of truck traffic, like another gentleman said, plus the rail traffic. Has there been any designing yet of how the train traffic is going to be flowing? Is it going to be all coming off of the mainline BNSF, or is it going to be utilizing the old Sioux Line rail?
As far as crude oil is concerned, our preferred method of receiving is by pipeline. So there's just about 1 million barrels a day of oil being produced in the state, and most of it's leaving. And so our 20,000 barrels a day doesn't make much of a pinprick in that bubble. As far as product is concerned, most of the product can go in any direction. It can go by truck or by rail in either direction. And we, as this gentleman pointed out, or as Guy pointed out actually, the transportation of our product in an ordinary product pipeline is not acceptable, because pipelines tend to accumulate sulfur on their inside of the pipeline wall, and if you ran a clean fuel through it, such as we would make, it would absorb the sulfur back off the pipeline into the crude and deteriorate its quality. So I think as far as truck and rail traffic is concerned, there would be some product from the refinery that would be shipped by rail or by truck. I can't give you a logistical study of that just off the top, but it's certainly part of our considerations. Does that give you any satisfaction? Through where? Yeah. Well, anything that goes east would either go by truck or by rail, and anything that goes west wouldn't go through town.
Brian, I can adjust. The truck traffic projection is 200 trucks a day. During the peak of our dike and levee construction, we were at 1,100 trucks a day, and we leveled off to 400 trucks. I do not have the rail information.
Any other questions this roll?
It would be Northern Plains Rail.
Name's Ron Nelson. I've lived here all my life, basically. I've heard a lot of ifs and probablys and maybes and whatnot up here tonight. I guess I got a question. And I'm going to cut this short like that gentleman back there said. Do the question and get all the other jazz. You guys are talking about 400 people coming in. What are we looking at for wages for these people? Bottom end, top end. Can you? Hey. He just wants to. Can you hear me? You guys hear me? Anybody hear me? Oh, all right. Can you guys hear me up there?
Just repeat
Fine.
the question for the...
The question is, can you tell me the answer to what's the bottom scale, wage scale going to be, and the top wage scale on these qualified people that are coming in to this, build this facility? Hello?
He's asking, what is the wage scale going to be?
What's the wage scale going to be for the low end and the top end of the people that you guys are bringing in to build this facility and operate it? Thank you, Dale. Thank you, Dale. No.
Well, as an engineer, I'm severely underpaid, I can assure you of that. And having said that, well, you're asking a question that is going to occur in the future, so it's just a little difficult to answer with precision. We're trying to give you the best answer that we can here, and I think that entry wages for, say, a young man or a young woman coming in to learn trade or skill at the refinery, might be $15 an hour or something. I don't know if that's, certainly at the time in the future it'll be more than that. And no, because they not only work, but they learn. The best place to learn about refining is on the job, and so wages go up from there. The $25 an hour, an operator would probably make more money than that. The refinery manager would make more than that, and if there's any lawyers involved, they'll make more than that.
Right under the bus on that.
I wanted to get the microphone away from Earl before he had a chance to respond to that one. But sometimes the best answer to the question is I don't know. And I think between the Department of Commerce and Forward Devil's Lake and Job Service North Dakota, we can find out the answer to that question. I'm sure for a lot of the employees, it's going to be over 25, 30 bucks an hour, even though we want to make it as small as possible for the gentleman in row C. But I don't know, but we should be able to find that out, and considering the good reporting by the newspaper in town, that could come out at a later time. But I don't know either.
Other questions for this row? Row G. Okay. We'll move on to the next row. Any questions?
Yes. Len Slater, a resident here in Devil's Lake. I'll make this very short. Thank you for this presentation tonight. The due diligence I find very interesting. I'm looking forward to having updates before, after, during the process, rather than after the fact. That scares me. And one of that will definitely be keep us informed. It's easier to work with us than butt heads. We've all been through that. And that brings me to the other one. I'm very concerned about the lake. I don't ruin it. I'm retired. I want to go fishing.
Any other questions? Roll H. We'll move on to I.
My name is Tom Townsend. I'm resident, live here in Devil Lake. And to my experience, I've been around some refineries over in the Bismarck, Mandan area. And to my experience, all the workers that worked there had to be union, which is a good thing because they have to know what they're doing. And I think anybody that would work at this refinery should be union also. That is my observance of it. And I have a question to anyone up there that would be able to answer it. Is this refinery gonna affect property taxes here in Devil Lake any? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. My hope is that our property taxes will go down because of this refinery. That's one of the things I think is important to our community and to all the political subdivisions that are involved, that being the township, school district, park district, city of Devils Lake, Ramsey County. I think as we go into this, if this eventuates and becomes a reality, I think our citizens need to benefit from this as well. And I would like to see part of the arrangement that's made with Eagles Ledge that we get some property tax relief for our citizens. I think that's very important, and that's what we'll work towards.
Any other questions? Roll J.
Okay, Mark Moen, I'm from Devils Lake. I realize most of the questions have been regarding the environment and health, and I think that makes sense, but my question is maybe seems a little more superficial, but I've been through a lot of communities with oil refineries, and most of them are less than inviting, to put it nicely, and there's a certain stigma with oil refineries. I realize that to an oil executive, an oil refinery might be a thing of beauty, but if you're a hunter and fisherman, it's really not, and considering this is a hunting and fishing mecca, I just wonder if there's anything that can be done to mitigate, the appearance or the cosmetics or the aesthetics of the refinery. Again, I don't think this is something that would nix whether we do this or not, but I think on the front end there may be things that can be done to make it less industrial looking, or if you know what I mean.
Well, you could plant a lot of trees around it and things like that, I imagine that would mitigate some of the, maybe the site issues if you think it's...
Have they done that in Mandan, did they?
Well, yeah, I was just going to say that the Tesoro refinery in Mandan has an area to the northwest of the refinery that they call the North 40, and they've converted that to kind of a wetland situation. I mean, for everything from deer to geese to ducks, and it's just something that they've done. I think is part of good citizenship and a reflection of their concern about the environment as well. I mean, obviously, like it's been referred to earlier, you're not going to completely eliminate emissions, but I imagine there are ways, and Bob can probably address that more accurately, but there are ways to, whether it's sight or noise, whatever it might be, mitigated to a certain degree. But that North 40 in Mandan is a nice waterfowl area right now.
Other questions? Roll J. Are you going to speak?
Do you want me to respond just very briefly to the question that was just asked? Is that refineries make relatively good income and care about their image. And I know of the city of El Segundo, which is immediately adjacent to the Los Angeles LAX airport, surrounded by homes, many of whom all of whom are concerned citizens. And El Segundo put trees around their entire refinery, a fence, in some cases berms, and those are things, the first thing we'll do at this refinery is put a fence around it. And the use of berms and trees would also be on the table. I even saw one refinery that put a candy stripe around their crude tower. Looked like a great big lollipop. But refining is very, very, very serious business and requires a lot of attention. And I think the people involved in it are pretty high-class people. So they're intelligent, they're safety conscious, and they've learned a lot of and apply a lot of good lessons in life. So I don't think the people who work at the refinery will be demeaning in any manner to Devil's Lake, and I think they will live and be part of the community and be upstanding and contributing citizens. So I think that the presence of the refinery in the Devil's Lake will be an advantage and not a detractor in that regard.
Roll J, please.
Oh, wait. Can I ask my question? Okay. Good evening, and thank you for all the information you've shared tonight. My name is Diane Mertens, and I'm from Devil's Lake. However, I grew up in northern Illinois where it was quite industrious. My concern is we will be your neighbors to the east from where our farmstead lives or is located. And my concern is the noise that might impact our land as well. Can you share, you just shared, will you be doing berms and trees and things like that?
Noise production is one of the standards that has to be satisfied by rotating equipment, electric motors and pumps and things of that nature. And so preventative measures are taken during the construction to ensure that the decibel on both the A scale and the B scale are not exceeded. And there are stringent requirements which will be part of the refinery specifications to be complied with. So I think that where you live, you will not be bothered by the noise.
Roll K, please. No questions?
Hallelujah. Thank you. This is really an important meeting for the community. I'd really like to thank the organizers for giving us this opportunity and also Sir for a little extra endurance there. I don't have a question, but because many of them have been answered, but I still have a list of them. And some community members have shared questions with me, and some are my own. And without objection, I'd like to just be able to, it's too easy. If I could just walk these down and give them to the panel, because that's who I really want to get them to. Is that all right? Sure. Thank you.
Any other questions? Back 3 rows here. Anybody? One over there. Okay.
Okay, my name is Brianna Atherton. I'm just speaking as a concerned mother. One of my questions, or I should say my question, is to everyone up there. With the potential income coming from the oil refinery and annexing or possible annexing of the North Creel Township where I live, what will be done with the school systems? Will there be more income put into them? Will we be expanding? That sort of thing.
I might need Scott's help on this one, because the school funding formula is very complicated the way I understand it, but the school district obviously would share in the additional property taxes, so it would be a school board decision as to what they would do with that. But just to kind of put it in perspective, the total taxable value in the city of Devils Lake right now is $300 million, and they're looking at a $200 million project. So you can just do the math and see how that affects our property taxes potentially. But I don't know if Scott wants to address this question or not, but did I answer it? Okay.
An increasing amount of school reimbursement is the state foundation aid payment. As the state's financial fortunes have improved, that has been going north. It used to be less than half, and now it's about 70% or maybe even north of that. And so in addition to property tax, on a student count, more money comes into the district as well. So more students, more money based on that state formula.
Any other questions the last 3 rows? If not, Denny, are there hands waving in the balcony?
Let's give our panelists a big turn the mic over to Mayor Dick Johnson.
Have a good evening. Anyway, just briefly from the city of Devils Lake, I had some comments, but I know everybody wants to get out of here. It's been a long evening. But first of all, I want to thank everybody for being here. We need to know what you're thinking about, and so we can make informed decisions. And just by some of the questions and some of the follow-up that will eventuate from your comments, it helps us in making decisions. Just so you know, it's very important, this due diligence thing you keep hearing. You've heard that buzzword a lot tonight. But we're going to take go the extra mile and take the extra steps necessary to do that. And Mr. Pomeroy being here tonight is just a witness, and I guess it's evidence that that's what we want to do. We want to make sure what we do for our community is the right thing to do, and it's a good fit. There's going to be several other processes that have to happen, and that you're invited to attend, and there will be public hearings about them. If it's annexation, there could be zoning, and now Terry has mentioned that now with some of the permits that are required, the clean air permits and those types of things, that requires another public meeting. So there's going to be a lot of transparency to this project. So I just ask that you keep involved with that. You know, again, knowledge is power, and we've heard that a lot lately, but it's true. So we invite you to participate in those hearings, and look forward to your input. A couple other things I wanted to mention in the due diligence thing. We had the opportunity to drive around at the Oil Refinery, and it was a day that they were producing gas, which is it's a more intense operation than is diesel. And didn't notice any noise. There was no noticeable odor while we were there. And it's amazing. If you look right across the street, there's a new development of houses, and I would guess the average house is probably $300,000 or more. There was a middle school within that neighborhood. There was, I believe, a congregate care living facility. So people are building around these refineries, and that's an older refinery. So that's just a testament, as well as what Kyle Blanchfield said, that the Missouri River runs right adjacent to that. So, and that's a great natural resource as well. Not as nice as our Devil's Lake, but still very important. So just want to make sure that you're aware of that. And I think the key thing that we want to talk, we talk about economic development, and David brought some things up tonight that it's true. We're going to have a chance to offer, we're hoping for some property tax relief through this. I think there needs to be some of that in there. That's one of the things. What a refinery also does is stabilize our economy. We're really dependent upon ag, and that's good. But prices fluctuate, and that's not always so good. With that in mind, the producers, they don't have the money to reinvest, they don't have the money to buy equipment, that type of thing. Oil goes up and down. The barrel's down to $80 a barrel now. You'll talk to the refiners, and they're going to tell you that a refinery is a very stable business. It is very stable. And with that in mind, it's diversity, it's stabilization of our economy. So when one of the economic drivers drops, there's others there to pick it up. So diversity is so important to that. And that's one of the reasons we're looking at doing the possibility of doing what we're doing. And I guess as I conclude my comments, I want you to understand that you have 5 commissioners that live in this community. 3 of them have lived there, I believe, all their lives. I've lived here 44 years, and I think our rookie's in the audience, Dale. He's a fairly newcomer. He's in the 2nd term. I get to call him a rookie because he's the last one in. But we're all concerned about our community. We live here. I have grandkids that live here. I have a son and a daughter that still lives here. And we want to keep this a safe community. And you have our commitment, my commitment, that we'll do everything we can to keep this community as safe as it is. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being here.
I'm the last of the presenters in the comments today. If there are any unanswered questions, I encourage you to write them on the back of the piece of paper that you had and turn it on the table on the back as you leave. We will get those to you. What we'll do from here is we will go through the due diligence process. We will find the answers to these questions. If we do not have them, we will then at that time file a report as stated earlier, and I will do a press release when it will be available for pickup in the Forward Devils Lake office. At this time, we encourage the media to follow us to the Chautauqua Gallery along with the panel, city and county commissioners, Forward Devils Lake board members, and the state representatives if you wish for a press conference. Thank you.